Hello, space junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Scott Botman, and I've got a full starship with me on this show here in the Drunken Gungan, and I couldn't do it without my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how's it going?
We made it, Scott. We made it. It was about, I
It
don't
is
know,
beyond amazing.
it's about like 12 or 13 weeks in a row. We didn't miss a show because between Bad Batch season 2 and what we've gotten into Mando season 3, just literally, I mean, and it was even crazy there in the middle because we had 2 shows to cover at the same time. Even the first time it was 3 episodes because we had that, middle portway with the Bad Batch. So good to finally be able to wrap it all up here. We'll take a break for a week, and then we'll be right back into it because it'll be May the 4th weekend to talk about all the cool stuff and all the big drops that are coming on Disney Plus that Thursday. And then, super excited that we'll be able to talk Mando season 3 finale today.
Yep, and we're certainly going to be joined by our other podcast usual, our very own Dave Filcloni, Mr. Miracle, the gooey, chewy man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. Nathan, we made it.
We made it, and now I'm going through withdrawals. We haven't had a new episode of Star Wars since Wednesday. I don't know what to do. I mean, this coming Wednesday,
Star Trek ended
lost
too,
and
so
confused.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, no new Star Wars until May 4th, when Visions comes out.
That's right. Well, you know who you can ask for advice. Yes.
Yeah, yes, and that technically comes out too.
Yeah. You know who you can ask for advice? Our very own Broby Wan Kenobi. Mr. Lee Fillingsness has come back to discuss the season finale of Mando. Welcome back, Lee.
Hey, it's good to be here. Can I do a shameless plug?
Of course you can.
I just at a recent film festival, I was in 4 films. 3 of them were nominated for the Best of Festival. There are only 10 films chosen from the entire festival to get that. 2 of those films were nominated for Best Fight, and for the first time ever in this festival, I was nominated for acting.
Outstanding! Congratulations!
You can act?
Yeah, that came as a surprise.
With you.
I can't, but I'm really good at pretending that I can.
He's good at BSing.
Well, sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you did there. I'm acting like I know how to act. Whoa.
Isn't that what acting is? Anyway.
Now that's philosophy now.
Yes, right. Yeah. Well, congratulations to Lee. And of course, speaking of big, important things, we've got a hugely important episode of the podcast. It is the analysis of the finale of season 3 of The Mandalorian. This would be episode number 8 of season 3, or chapter 24 overall, The Return. So, as always, we can kick things off with the discussion of what does the title mean? Nathan, is it them going back to Mandalore? Is it the return to Mandalore? We actually had quite a few returns in this episode.
We did have quite a few returns. I think the big obvious one is the return to Mandalore, but also Mandalore's return to being independent of not being under Imperial rule or Imperial remnant rule. But it's also the return of Moff Gideon.
Mm-hmm.
Our heroes hadn't seen him in quite some time. So he showed back up for them. We saw him last episode, but our heroes didn't, or at least not until the very end. So yeah, there's a few possible meanings there. I'm sure there are others I have not covered as well. But typical Dave Filoni naming the convention here, lots of possible meanings.
Derrick, is that what you feel like the return means?
Maybe, but then we got the ending that we did, and I thought, well, okay, this is going to be the return back to basics, maybe come season 4, but that's getting ahead. We'll talk about that after break.
Yeah. Lee, is that what the return means to you? The title, is that what it holds for you?
No, it means 2 things. One, the return to Navarro, where this all kind of started. So that's kind of how they ended it. The return to the little kind of iris closing, which is how all the Star Wars movies ended, 1 through 6.
Yep.
People made fun of that, and they're like, "You forgot that they all did that, right?" And then I will also say the return to the ground for that really big spaceship for our light
Yes.
cruiser. It returned to the
That's true.
ground. Yes.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, for me,
go ahead.
yeah, for me, it was the return of IG-11 Marshall, because we've seen IG
Yes.
do a lot of stuff in this season, but never as him actual self. You know what I mean? So IG-11, the real deal, is back, and now he is definitively on the side of good as the new Marshal. So that'll be cool. All right. Well, speaking of returning, let's return to form and do our usual 1 through 5 questions. And Lee, as our special guest, I will start out with you for question number 1. What did you like most about this episode, The Return?
Yeah, and everything between the opening and closing credits.
Right? It was so good.
You know what? Because it's my role on this thing, I'm going to say the fights. I think this is actually the first time we've really seen what Lateef Crowder is bringing to the table. He had like some good moments, but it was more brawly in the first few seasons. This Lateef Crowder does an Afro Brazilian martial art called capoeira, and you really start to see the intensity and the footwork and the skill that he has in this fight more than we have anywhere else. In pretty much all these different fights, he's doing just great cuts. So just considering the whole episode was a fight, I'm still standing by it. Just everywhere we go, we've got some John Wick moments. We've got, kind of callbacks to, episode 7 or episode 8 of the new trilogy. Like, it's just so much fun stuff. But yeah, fights.
Yeah,
and
they
the
were-
new guns. I love his new guns so much better than the other one.
Yeah, there were some epic fights there. Derek, what did you like best about this episode?
Probably my favorite part of the episode was really, I felt like it got to a nice point within the story to say, okay, we can kind of get back to what Mando is all about. I think as we went through the first 3 seasons and really into this season, it felt kind of bigger than the Mandalorian, which is fine, right? I totally get that. It's got to be, but I feel like it was a simple thing with season 1, season 2, and it took off, right? It's lightning in a bottle, and we've been able to get all these other great shows that we announced and that we'll be covering. But and again, it's kind of, we'll talk a bit more in the break, but the way it ended, I felt like, okay, they're going to be able to go back to form with that. So I really enjoyed the ending where it's like, okay, Mando's back to bounty hunting. I think it'll help tie in Grogu a bit more, since we knew, or at least we know, or the expectance that, Favreau was forced to bring Grogu back. To the point where they actually, really named him and, still debating whether or not they're going to give him a voice and all that stuff. So overall, like I said, I'm really happy the way it ended because it was great. Like I said, that like you actually felt like it kind of completed the story, though we know it's not probably. So.
Yeah, great. All right, Nathan, what was your favorite part of this episode?
Well, every once in a while, Dave will have an idea that he gets while he's not connected to the Filoni neural network, and he can actually come in and surprise me. And he did that in this episode when it turns out that all the clones are clones of Moff Gideon himself. Seeing Grogu looking up at that clone, and it's Moff Gideon's face, and Din explains it's not really him, it's a clone of him. But then all of a sudden it opens its eyes. Oh my gosh, that freaked me out.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
That was my favorite moment, and it also recontextualized what Moff Gideon said at the end of last episode, where he said, "The biggest upgrade that I've made is I'm the one in the suit." We all thought that meant I'm the one in this, black armor. I make this look good. But no, turns out he's talking about he's the one in all of the suits, all of the faceless goons that we've been fighting for the past 2 episodes. are him. So yeah, that was definitely my favorite moment right there.
Can we call him Agent Smith
Cool.
now?
No,
You should.
There you go.
no, we can call him Moff Smith.
But is that for sure though? Because I thought Gideon was pretty upset that none of them got to leave their tubes. That was what I
None
thought.
of the
He
ones
was
with
pissed off at Mando.
midi-chlorians got to leave their tubes.
Oh, so
Right.
those ones were for sure going to have metachlorians. Okay.
Yeah, remember he said I had worked out how to make them use the Force.
Well, I
That's the
thought
one
he was
thing I never had,
trying
the
to. I
Force.
thought he didn't. That's why he needed Grogu. I thought that was the whole point of
Well,
him wanting
but remember,
Grogu.
he
They didn't
got
figure
some of
that out.
Grogu's blood too.
Yeah,
Last
I know
season.
when they
yeah.
captured him and stuff, but I didn't think that was enough. I thought he needed Grogu like permanently for other stuff. But
No,
maybe.
But I think he's got Dr. Pershing back. I think we just didn't see that part. Yeah, I think he just lied to the rest of the Imperial remnants about Dr. Pershing not being available. He's got him squirreled away somewhere, working on this problem right now, and
Oh no, I
had
thought
solved it.
maybe so.
I-
Maybe so about Dr. Pershing. I was under the impression that with the Mind Flayer, they had just blanked Dr. Pershing so he could
Yeah.
never betray the secrets to anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
they want you to think.
Well, I mean, maybe they used the Mind Flayer on me to implant that thought into my mind.
Maybe, but no, I think he just lied to the rest of the Imperials.
Well, yeah. he's
There's only
lying the
one way
whole
to
time.
find out.
Watch
Look at
season
it.
4.
Poor Gullis.
Poor Gullet!
We'll find the truth.
Yes.
But Bo Gullet died.
He did die. Yeah.
That poor Gullet died.
Do we think
we
there's
could
a
get
whole
another
planet
one.
of poor Gullets? Actually, didn't we once have
I
the
hope so.
theory
There's a whole
that
planet of Yodas.
didn't we once have the theory on our show during Andor that the alien race that created that horrible sound was Bor Gullet's race?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so therefore they've all been wiped out because that horrible sound came from when the Imperials purged that planet.
Well, there's purged plenty of Jedi, and they're still around. So
They purged the Mandalorians too, and
Touche.
Imperial purging
And the
doesn't
Lasat.
take.
Yep.
The Lasat totally purged. No more of them.
It's like the Empire is perfect. They're like, we've killed everyone. In the meantime, like while they're all celebrating behind them, literally everybody's escaping, right? Is the joke.
yes,
Yep.
that's right.
So-
Yeah.
Well,
No,
the more they tighten their
that's
grip, the
escape.
more star systems will slip through their fingers.
Bingo.
And that's
Yeah, that's
exactly
true,
what's
too.
happened. Yeah.
Palpatine needs to get his money back for Order 66, as there's still so
Yes.
many Jedi out there. It's crazy. Anyway, all right. My favorite part about this episode was the fact that nobody turned out to be a traitor. We had so much fandom going, just jumping at shadows as to who's the other spy. The Armorer's a traitor. Axe Woves is a traitor. That's why he flew out through the roof in episode 8 or episode 7. Koska Reeves is going to be the traitor. No, it's et cetera, et cetera.
Richard Wolowski is going to be the traitor.
Yes, right. He's the traitor, but never the rebel spy. But no, it turned out that
Gideon
nobody
was
a traitor.
technically a traitor, though.
He was a traitor to the rest of the Shadow Council in a way.
Well,
yes.
And the episode last time was called Spies, and he was definitely a spy because he was part of the ISB.
Yep.
Mhm.
And there was
Anywho.
multiple Gideons too.
I was just happy that it
Ooh,
turned out that the Armorer is still on the side of the good guys and filled with
For
honor.
now.
Koska Reeves was kicking butt and helping save the day, and then of course Axe Woves did the awesome "I'm better than Anakin Skywalker" thing almost when it comes to crashing ships into a target, and then busted out the window and flew
Take
out at
that,
the last
Deanna
second.
Troy.
That's right, a la Ahsoka in the end of the Clone Wars when she rode that crashing cruiser down to its destruction. So yeah,
Hers
it was
a
cool.
lot cooler looking though.
It was a lot cooler because she's got the Force, but Axe Woves was no slouch here, man. I think
No,
that's
he was
definitely
cool.
my favorite part was crashing the thing into the Imperial base on Mandalore, because it's like he knew that he was doomed, but he did that last minute calculation, and for a few seconds there, I thought that he was just going to die in a fiery crash, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, he's going to
maneuver.
punch out the window, and yeah, I thought he was going to pull a holdover maneuver.
We got jetpacks.
Yeah, except they fly now. So he's
They fly
good.
now?
So they fly
They
now.
fly now.
And so he jumped out the window, and then he was fine at the end. I'm like, yes, nobody had to be a traitor, and none of the main characters bit the big one, except of course perhaps for the Darksaber. So that gives me a segue into question number 2, and I will go first because blankety bleep bleep you, Dave Filoni. You had them destroy the Darksaber, the coolest lightsaber ever. I understand the reasoning and why it had to happen narratively, but I am utterly pissed that Moff Gideon crunched the freaking Darksaber. I wanted that thing to be harder to destroy than it actually turned out to be. Lee's taking off his headphones. I must be yelling too loud in my displeasure.
Oh,
Anyway,
no, I was going to go grab something. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll save you for last. So anyway, guys, this is the part I hated about that. I'm gonna go so far, not even dislike. I hated that. I was like, the Darksaber, come on, man, it's so cool, and I would love to have seen Bo-Katan become Empress of Mandalore with the Darksaber. Now I get that there might be all these reasons why she doesn't need it anymore. Their society has evolved beyond it, but it was like watching Excalibur get destroyed, you guys. That doesn't happen, or at least it's not supposed to. George Lucas even once famously told Mark Hamill and David Prowse, when you are fighting with the lightsabers, treat them like it's Excalibur, a big Zweihander swinging that giant sword. It has gravitas and weight, not just actual weight from gravity, but the weight of storyline and myth and legend. And the Darksaber was the modern incarnation of that, and it's crunched by Moff Gideon's gauntleted hand? Come on.
I saved it. Don't worry, we're okay.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Lee. I am mollified and no, but rant over.
Yeah, Scott, you got to let go of the past. Kill it if you have to.
Apparently, that's what I have to do. Except, wait, no, that was Kylo Ren being wrong about things.
Yeah. People forget he's the bad guy. What he says isn't necessarily good advice.
Yeah, it's bad advice.
Might as well Kylo wrong.
Hey. Okay, rant over. I'm calming down. You got to get my blood pressure back under control. I'm gonna miss the Darksaber.
There's enough symbolism though that we can go into it if you need to, Scott. So,
anybody want to? Yeah, all right. Let's go back to panel mode. Well, first of all, let's start with the Filoni network here. Nathan, what the hell, man? What happened?
Well, with the Darksaber, well, clearly it's because it was Beskar that he was crushing it with. That's what allowed him to crush it. I will say one of my least favorite parts of the episode was the fact that Bo-Katan could still use her hand after that. That part didn't make sense. I thought that she should be, walking around like this.
She's going to pull a Luke Skywalker and have to get the robotic hand replacement.
Yeah, because I mean, to crush somebody's. To crush the Darksaber with her hand still around it, that should have done some damage to her hand before it damaged the Darksaber. I'm not saying it's wrong to have been able to damage the Darksaber. But yeah, in terms of symbolism, yeah, I think it is a symbol of the uniting of the two clans, because one clan has this whole idea of you can't take your helmet off, and the other clan has this idea of the Darksaber is the right to rule. But the two clans don't see eye to eye on that, because Dan talked about how I knew nothing of the Darksaber other than what you told me. So I think it is the two sides coming together to say, you know what, the whole keeping your helmet on thing, not as important as y'all think it is. The whole Darksaber thing, not as important as we think it is.
But you could have saved the Darksaber as a symbol. Even if you do no longer use it as, the ability to wield supreme executive power, you just put it on the wall in a museum. It belongs in a museum.
I'm sorry, but supreme executive power derives from a mandate by the masses, not from some farcical aquatic tart throwing a sword at you.
Yes, I agree. And we could easily have the mandate of the masses of Mandalore, the Mandalorian mandate, but we could
vote for Bo-Katan.
But
we could
have Bo-Katan. But the problem was what you needed was Bo-Katan to save the Darksaber's Kyber crystal. As long as they saved the Kyber crystal, everything would have been fine.
Yeah, and I think that has happened.
That could have happened. You're right, Nathan.
I think that the Kyber crystal is still there, and
as long as it didn't get melted away in the
for
fire.
Later this podcast in season 4, I think the Darksaber's coming back.
And let's be honest, they did just let us know that Hu Yang is coming back.
And he is Mr. Let's Do Lightsabers.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not gone.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can bring back Luke's lightsaber twice like that, come on.
Although I will also complain that Dave had, she was wielding it and her hand got crushed and the hilt got crushed as well. Excuse me. That has already happened in a Star Wars story in the last 12 months in the Star Wars comics. Blonde-haired Luke lost his yellow lightsaber in a very similar attack by a person with a robotic hand crushing it.
It's
So
like poetry. It rhymes.
Thank you, George. Okay, all right. You guys have mollified me. I feel better. Thank you for listening to my rant. We're going to move on. Nathan, what did you like least about this episode?
There wasn't much that I didn't like about this episode. I should have been more prepared with something I disliked. There just isn't one. You know what, though? I will go with the mouse droids. They were super cute. Loved seeing them. But when the one mouse droid went off, why did it go get like four other mouse droids instead of,
Some
a trooper?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
One trooper showing up would have stopped R5.
To be
all
fair,
the mouse
they were
droids
either
in the world. No.
they were either dead, Nathan, or they were all stuck behind the force field gates that Mando was trying to get to. So that's all that was left.
Or they were
Because that
flying
goes to-
around.
Because that goes to my rant. Because apparently nobody was in the hallway because that's how Grogu got Mando out. Because apparently, there's
but the
no
mouse
guard
droid
between them
isn't
and there.
limited to the hallway.
That's
That's the thing. Grogu only needed to go down one hallway that happened to not have anybody in it. The mouse droid can go anywhere to get reinforcements.
It
And
even
decided-
had its own little tunnels.
Mhm.
Yeah, and decided, let me go get more mouse droids.
Well, they
Now-
wanted to have some droid on droid fight.
It was
Now,
a robot
the whole
revolution.
police sirens thing, that was awesome. Like, we're going to get you. Like,
Now
we're
you
not,
know what those
'cause-
little things are.
'cause we can't. We know why they are power 0 in the card game now. Because it doesn't matter how many you have, they can't do anything.
Though
Yeah.
I love how the one like fell off after R5 blasted off.
Two of them fell
One-
off.
It's like, woo!
Yeah, no, R5 is just like, this is ridiculous. I'm done here.
I'm
I'm,
out.
I'm jetting out. Bye,
All right.
y'all.
Okay, all right. Derek, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
I mean, obviously, we joking aside, it was a little bit of, like I said, Nathan thinks he's got that whole thing figured out, but the idea that Grogu simply just goes from one point to go save Mando and nobody stops him. Like, there's enough in there that's just like, that's just plot driven, poor writing, in my opinion. Like, if they would at least would have just shown him trying to sneak around, I would have been okay. But he just like disappears. And like nobody, like, I don't know, it just seems silly because he had to go through 2 blast doors to go down the same aisleway that Mando did, and there's no way that we know that they linked things. But joking
why
aside,
would he
the
have to
early
go through
was
2 blast doors?
because that's what was down to get between him and Din when they carried Din off. So
But
so
what-
the tunnels, and
but
then they were
he
going
just
back
goes-
to.
That way instead.
But how do you know there's another point, right? That because they only came down
because
that one
Grogu
point.
showed up.
Well, that's what I'm
Come
saying.
on.
Like, it didn't make sense to me. Like, if they would have shown him sneaking around, I would have been okay with it. But otherwise, it just seemed like, okay, here's a giant. And again, it's not like it's Grogu. It's Grogu in a freaking 10-foot tall IG assassin droid body, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like it would have been baby, the Yoda Grogu sneaking around. So
Well, remember how in Andor we realized how Kafka-esque it was? I mean, just wandering around the corridors, it's just straight up out of Metamorphosis. So they're just going back to those, literary references.
walk
Yes.
around like you own it. They're too fat and they don't care. They think nobody can do it, right? A giant assassin droid with a little baby Grogu inside. Sure.
Well, we
that
know
all the
how
time.
badly the Imperials overlook droids. I mean, that's like
yeah.
standard Star Wars 101. It's like, hey, these 2 stormtroopers are on patrol at this highly secret base. Oh, look, a random astromech they've never seen before wheels by in the hallway. It's just a droid. Who cares, man? You want to go on another smoke break? I could go for a smoke break.
So
Except these
Derek,
masks,
you
they
actually-
filter out the smoke. I can't even get it.
That's right.
it's true.
I hope it all.
Derek, you brought up the point though with the droids, and I think you're actually spot on. We know where the troopers are in this case. They're either following the Mandalorian, or they're behind the force fields guarding the clones, or they're still in the cloning tanks, or there's a couple of them that are escorting Din. I think it's just pretty much a matter of there's not really people in the hallways who aren't actively doing something that we know about. Other than mouse droids. But we don't care about droids. We're the Empire.
I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that if at some point, like it was, if they were like the whole point where they showed the scene where like Bo-Katan stopped, right, and she's trying to get the Mandalorians, the rest of them to follow. Like it would have been okay. Like she would have ran off after them, and you would have seen Grogu come behind, and like, oh, I'm gonna deviate to another tunnel, right? That's all I'm asking for, right? Something to say, oh, there are plenty of tunnels splitting that would have resulted in him magically force sensing Din to go find him, right? Like I'm perfectly fine with that.
I don't think he magically force sensed him.
But either way, like then he just magically found him.
No magic about it. Grogu sees the troopers carry Din off that direction. So when he goes out of there, he goes the same direction. And he catches up with him once Din slows the troopers down enough for Grogu to catch back up.
That's fine, but there was nothing to indicate there was another tunnel that they were in. Like it would have been fine.
There was a whole map. They show maps.
That was further.
Except they didn't have that until after when R5 jetted down into it. So the map wouldn't have worked at that point.
We as viewers got to see the map that Nathan's talking about.
Right.
But Derek's right. Yeah. Grogu didn't get to see that map.
Well, he doesn't need a map to basically follow those guys. He knows the direction
they're going walking in circles the whole time. So all I'm saying is they
because there was a canyon on one side. So like they're literally like that there is a barrier. They can't go this way. They can only go this way or across.
Correct.
Like he would have run into them eventually. So Nathan does have a point.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
I don't
if
see
they
this.
Just showed him beer at some point. That's all I'm asking for. Because
no, I can understand saying that you'd rather have that foreshadowing of seeing him veer off, but I don't think that makes it bad writing for them to leave it as a surprise. And I don't think it's any more unbelievable than anything we got on the Death Star in the original movie or Cloud City. Anytime there's we're running through the hallways, but we don't run into somebody until the camera's here.
But they got access when R2 showed them the map, right? Like they literally broke into the thing, got a map, and understood where to go for the central core unit for Obi-Wan. They knew where to go for the princess. So they at least had.
But they did not know where to go once they left the trash compactor, and they split up, and they got back together.
But to be fair, though, there was at least at that point deviated communication between them and R2 and C-3PO on the comm. So they could have been like, okay, C-3PO. Like, it could have left. They didn't show it. All I'm asking for.
But they didn't show that.
But you already.
So how is that all that different?
Because you established it is what I'm saying. They didn't, because for like I'm saying, so you think about when, and again, this is not even my question or answering my first or the real question. This was my joke. But what I'm saying is, so when they got to fight Gideon in episode 7, they're walking down this huge tunnel, right, that they went through, and it's all rock. And then they finally hit what they established as the mechanical base, right? So there's nowhere for them to show. I don't remember, at least recalling seeing like, oh, here's like 20, tunnels for them to go through. They literally had one entryway to get through. And next thing you know, they're cornered in facing Moff Gideon. So to even Lee's point, you're walking off. So when they're running away into that tunnel, how do I even know that that's not the base? That's the tunnel they dug. So I'm supposed to assume that there's massive tunnels everywhere. Like they didn't say like, oh, here's a bunch of tunnels. Where do I need to go? Like they didn't do anything is what I'm saying. All I'm asking for is they could have said some tunnels, like literally, because that's all they're going is through.
I feel like it's a bigger assumption on your part to say that this massive base doesn't have a bunch of tunnels than to say that it does.
Like I said, all I'm asking for is because literally, again, and my point was none of them cared enough about Grogu in an IG-12 bot. after they're all running away from him, like, oh, we got to protect the foundling, because that was my other major point. Again, nobody cared about it. There was no call outs. Like, they could have said, like, oh, where did Grogu go? And everybody's like, I don't know, something like I said, there was nothing to say literally between that and that. Grogu just shows up. And it's like, okay, here's because that's my only complaint about that.
That was kind of like related to my complaint from last episode of why was Grogu allowed to go with them into this huge combat zone?
Yes.
Like all the other kids.
I think that's the bigger question.
And that's fine too.
Why is he there in the first place?
Yeah.
So, but
anyway, okay. Derrick,
my
do you have
my
a serious answer?
My real serious answer is why did our serious complaint is they literally waited for us to bring Moff Gideon back, and they literally kill him off in an episode and a quarter. And to me, that was just a waste. Okay, yes,
I hope.
But to me, it just seemed like a waste of a character, especially since we had this conversation last time, right, Lee? Like, oh, Moff Gideon's like the way they designed him, and it's like, okay, I guess, okay. It just felt like very anticlimactic to me, the way they ended up just doing it. Like, it was a cool action scene, cool fight scenes, everything else. And I'm okay, but this will go back to when we come back from break and overall season 3. So, but that's my big complaint, is that I feel like it did injustice to Moff Gideon to have him literally be all this way and then to kill him at the end of this episode.
Yeah, that's a fair complaint of he was not involved very much. Total screen time, very, very small for him in season 3. Even if you want to multiply it by clones.
Yes.
Well, but then you have to figure out which ones are clones and which ones aren't.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, Lee, what did you dislike most about this episode?
Well, kind of the same thing as my first answer. I disliked Grogu's fight. Knowing what the IG unit is capable of, it would have been really fun to watch him joystick a fight like we saw in the end of season 1, which was amazing and so much damn fun. I want to see him giggling through that again. Like, that was just disappointing. And then once he got out of the suit, go watch Muppet Treasure Island again. And the way that he's jumping around is the exact same way that they had Kermit the Frog jumping around when he had his sword fight at the end. It was just once Din was part of the fight again, Grogu actually had a purpose, but like he could have been doing a lot more with his own fight style. And I really think that the way that we established how badass an IG unit is in a killing situation, that would have been really cool to see him help just whoop up on some of those kind of sentinel guards or whatever they were.
Praetorian guards?
No, the other ones. When he's doing his hallway fight.
Oh, okay.
Like that would have been kind of fun if they were fighting back to back. If they were, as the Greek, as the Spartans would have called it, a periokoi, the combination of two warriors. That would have been a really cool thing to see. But
it would have. But you know darn well that if Grogu had joysticked his way through that fight with such skill, all the internet Star Wars bros would have been like, "Well, how does Grogu know how to fight inside that thing? He's never had any training using an assassin droid." Actually,
yeah, but those guys are going to complain anyway.
They are.
Actually, I think they did it because he's technically a kid, even though he's older than everybody else, and he's a kid and he's killing people.
Spinning,
might have had something to do with it, but I agree. Pick one. Either Grogu should not come on this mission at all, or he should fight in this mission.
Yeah.
Having him.
It would have been a great opportunity for Grogu to pick up the Darksaber in the IG suit and do something. I mean, that would have been the ultimate payoff. That would have killed harder than Yoda fighting Count Dooku.
It would have, yeah.
As bad as that looks now, you crapped your pants with joy seeing that the first time in theaters.
Yeah, that would have been cooler than season 2
like that
Luke.
Scene. Yes.
That would have been cooler than season 2 Luke to get that, right? So
yeah.
No, I agree with you, Lee. It was total Gremlins 2 vibe for me when Gizmo goes Rambo mode and then starts building.
To survive a war, you gotta become war.
Yeah, so and he's just going through the rafters and all that stuff. That's so 100% agree.
All right. Okay. Question number 3, and Lee, will let you go first this time. What connections did you draw between the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, the first, getting back to the hallway fight, the design of those troopers is a design very, very similar to the original McQuarrie sketches for the stormtroopers, where they had the shields and lightsabers. But we get that, obviously, the parallel to the traitor from episode 7
Yep.
was pretty cool. And I know everyone else is going to talk about the Rebels link, but I think a lot of people might have missed the Utapau link because we've got this one little duel going on the landing pad, while we've got like this big battle in the giant chasm and going through the center of the planet behind them. And I can't believe I completely forgot in my talking about the fights, the armorer going Iron Thor. Ah, God, that just like jetpack hit somebody with a hammer. Like, I didn't know I had a fetish until right now.
Good to know. Good to know.
Well, it was great to see them like actually melee weapons were actually, again, when you actually were wearing Beskar armor and then the lasers just shoot off of you. But going in with melee weapon was better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of explains why melee weapons even exist in a world where you have blasters.
In the words of Worf, swords are more fun.
Indeed.
Yes.
So my favorite part of that episode was Worf saying that.
Yeah. My favorite part of Star Trek was Worf saying that.
Yeah. Or it would have been great if she'd have been like, and you have my hammer.
Yes. I could go for that. All right, Nathan, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
So we've already talked about the connections to episode 7 in that hallway fight. But what about the episode 1 connections in that hallway fight? Because we have these beam doors that open and close, and our hero is going through them, much like Qui-Gon Jinn was going through those doors to get to Darth Maul. And occasionally stopping because we can't get through the next door. But of course, very different approaches with Qui-Gon Jinn meditating. Din was a bit more like Maul. The door's not open yet. I'm going to pace around and get ready to run in and take you out. So that was the coolest connection that I saw. And then a connection to the second movie, but not the Star Wars movie. There was a connection to Star Trek with the underground gardens, very reminiscent of the Genesis test that they ran in Star Trek 2. The whole Genesis was supposed to be tested underground. Where is it? You're standing in it. Right?
Can I cook or can I cook?
We are bringing life from lifelessness here. So neat to get some parallels to the other big Star something franchise.
Yeah, totally. All right, Derek, what connections did you draw?
Obi-Wan's hut.
Yeah.
It did look a lot like Obi-Wan's hut.
When Din, and it was the same bench. So when Din's sitting down and he's relaxing, kicking up his feet. So that was very similar to Obi-Wan's bench.
Maybe it's like a prefab thing.
I was going to say, do you think that's like a 3D printed house in the Star Wars galaxy?
It's a mobile
considering
home.
how they were talking about just moving districts around in what was it, 2 episodes ago with the siege, like they obviously can make those houses pretty quick, and Navarro seemed to have bounced back relatively quick from the invasion from Gorian's Guard or whatever.
Gorian Shard.
Yes.
Yeah. For me,
the Shambling Mound.
The Shambling Mound, yes. The Swamp Thing pirate. For me, the big connection was astromech droids can fly, which makes perfect sense when you think about how sometimes they have to get out of the ship and operate in outer space, like the droids did on the Queen's ship in the Phantom Menace. And, all the astromechs kept getting shot off the wing, except for R2, who, that little droid did it. So the idea that all astromechs have those jets in their legs makes perfect sense now that I think about it, because there'll be times when they need to maneuver in deep space and get to the underside of the ship or do this or that. And so we saw R5 use his leg jets, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Blow
right,
motivator.
Yes, I can't fly anymore. They don't fly now.
I'm just not motivated.
Yeah, I could fly, but why? All right. So, question number 4. I think Nathan, did you write this one?
I
No,
did.
Derek, you wrote this question. So, Derek, take it away.
So, gentlemen, do you think Bo-Katan has climaxed in her character growth due to losing the darksaber and realizing Mandalorians are strongest when together? Is there anything else she can learn or develop?
I will go first. I don't think that she has climaxed. I think now that she realizes she doesn't need the darksaber, that she will also have more learning to do about what it means to rule through a mandate of the people. We were joking around about, the Mandalorian mandate earlier. But yes, she's going to have to figure out what it means to not necessarily be royalty, not rule by divine right or by right of combat, but rule, if you will, in a democracy. And so she's going to have more learning to do politically, not maybe so much about honor and service, although maybe about service in a different way, public service. So, no, I don't think that she has climaxed. And I think that she will, as played by Katie Sackhoff in season 4, is going to do more about bringing Mandalore back to its former glory, but in a new golden age for the Mandalorian people. Derek, you can answer your own question next.
I was going to let the others go first.
Oh, all right. Lee, what do you think? Has Bo-Katan climaxed, or we got more to go?
I don't think she has, because she still looks really grumpy. Just kidding. Sorry, my brain went a bad place there, gentlemen.
I was going to make a redhead climax joke, but I decided not to. So there you go.
Well, it's a myth anyways. No, I can hear the hate mail.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry,
So
everybody.
where's my Beskar to avoid the flamethrowers?
Yeah. Nice redhead joke again. Nice. You know what?
You.
No, I don't think she will. Or I don't think she has. I think that just getting back is not the end of the fight. I think, rebuilding an idea, kind of joining this disparate group of tribes. You've got the people that never left. You got the people that, were on Conquered Dawn. You got the people that were the nobility, like Axe Woves, that were there. This combination of ideologies and visions of what Mandalore is, and making that into something, I think is really cool. And it's, again, an example of what kind of story they could have given to Princess Leia if they treated her like a good character. Because, Bo-Katan was instrumental in these fights, was instrumental in bringing this together. We understand that Leia was, but we never see it. Like the way that, she's leading the charge. And the next steps, talk about somebody that had their home planet destroyed, surrendered to, this evil guy, was still betrayed after giving the information that they wanted. We've got that parallel, and this still goes forward, and people still believe in her enough to do the next thing and the next thing. And I think that continuing with this, we can get the kind of story that Leia should have gotten, because she never really got one, at least not on screen. So yeah. I think that there's definitely some fun mining to be done, as long as they take the time to tell it. And the unfortunate thing is that might not happen because it's the Mandalorian, and it's going to go back to Din and Grogu. Good or bad, that's going to be the story. And maybe there's something going on in Ahsoka that we can kind of get something there too.
Yeah. Nathan.
Well, I was just going to say, from Lee's point, though, real quick, sorry. You had the Mandalorian, and the next show will just be Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mandalorians, plural. Yeah, right.
Or just the Mandalorian, meaning the people.
Like the Marvels.
Yeah, like the Marvels. Yeah. Okay, all right. Nathan, Bo-Katan, has she...
well, I'm going to ignore all the horrible jokes that y'all have been making and instead quote Shakespeare and say what's past is prologue. I think Everything that Bo-Katan has done up to this point has only served to prepare her to become the leader of Mandalore. She is starting a whole new journey. So her story is really just beginning. So I think we'll see more of her. I think we'll see how she leads the people. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers here, that we see Mandalore grow and become a big part of perhaps even Rey's movie set,
Ooh,
way after the sequel trilogy.
yeah.
Yeah, and
About
maybe
30
by that
years
time,
at that point.
maybe by that time, Bo-Katan has given up leadership, and we see what she has built and what her legacy has become by that point in time. But I think at this moment in time, defeating Moff Gideon and becoming the leader of the people, that's just the start.
Wow, great, good answer, and way to class up the podcast by quoting Shakespeare. All right, Derek, your answer to your own question, sir.
So it depends, right? So obviously, if I feel like if they don't get their own series at this point, I feel like it's going to be pretty limited, because I don't think season 4 of The Mandalorian is going to contain too much. I think at this point it's almost like everybody he's made friends with gets like a cameo or two throughout the season, and that's it,
Yeah.
right? So we might get
Yeah.
caught up on something, but we're not going to be like, for a season and a half that Bo-Katan's been with us now, right? Plus, obviously, all the stuff from Clone Wars and all that stuff that we got, and Rebels. So what I'm hoping is absolutely right what you guys talked about, right? But I could see it going one of two ways. I can see exactly, the points that you guys were making on a high point and what she does with it. But I can also see it based off of how her character is. If they want her to go bad, is that she becomes infuriated or infatuated with the Darksaber. And that's how we get the Darksaber to come back. And from that point, she is then the fallen one, because she, forgoes, just like we've seen before at the beginning of this season, where if something doesn't go her way, what does she do? I'm just going to go lay on my throne and whine and cry about it. And that to me foreshadows enough that did she get enough character growth? I don't know. I can see them if they want to go with it and give her more to grow with it, or is she going to be that same character and now we're going to see her decline? So it just depends on which direction you're going to go with it. So if they do, I think that's the character, the growth we get. And then obviously she hasn't even touched the surface, but if not, then I feel like she's plateaued, because then even though we could get her potentially to be a bad guy or something down the line where she's the fallen one, even though if you want to classify that as character growth, but to me, it's going the other way, because she really, to be fair, really hasn't changed, which we've seen her play the bad guy already.
Interesting. I kind of would like to see her like obsessed with rebuilding the Darksaber, and like she's almost Gollum like, and give me my sword, give me my precious, and it's just like consumes her with lust for the sword itself, but also the power that it to her.
Well,
that it brings.
yeah, what it comes with, to what your points you
Yeah.
guys were making earlier, right? That the Darksaber doesn't mean anything, but does it, right? When you are raised that way in royalty and you don't have it, and she's had it now 3 times at this point. So,
Yeah.
The fact that she's lost it every single time makes her want to
Has
say,
she had it 3
I
times or
have
only
to have
2?
it. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think she's had it 3 times. Maybe she's had it twice only.
Because
I feel
Sabine
like she
gave
had
it to her once,
Yeah.
and then she
but then
didn't
how
get
did
it
Sabine
again.
get it?
Sabine got it
Did-
from when they went to Maul's
Mhm.
lair on Dathomir.
In Rebels, yeah.
Correct. It wasn't that Death Watch, but isn't that okay? But because we saw it in Clone Wars too, right? Who had it in Clone Wars?
Paz
Garsaxon?
Maul.
Vizsla had it.
Yeah, Paz
Paz
Vizsla, and then
Vizsla.
Maul won it from him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when Maul won it, Bo-Katan left Death Watch, but she never had it in
Okay.
Clone Wars.
Okay.
Okay, she never had it in Clone Wars then? Okay. So then maybe she's only had it twice, right? But at this point, I think it's going to become the point where it's like every time she's had it, she's lost it. And I think that's going to become her infatuation with it. Like she's got to prove that she can, wield the Darksaber and that she doesn't lose it. And that's then going to be a cost for people. Like I said, it's one of two ways that they could take her character. So is it growth or is it decline?
Yeah. Okay. I like it. All right, Nathan, your final question for this season of The Mandalorian.
All right. Moff Gideon died in a super climactic way. A freaking spaceship got dropped on his head. I don't know what more you could ask than that. But here's the question. Was that the original Gideon? Or was that a clone? And if it wasn't a clone, are there other clones of him running around? Will we see another Moff Gideon later? And if so, in what capacity?
All right. I think Lee wants to go first here.
Yes. First, I left it for you guys because I assumed everyone was going to do it on the connections, but we didn't make that connection to Kanan's death when they dropped the ship.
Grogu.
With the, holding the fire back and everything. But in that, I think that anyone who's ever been to a hotel knows that you can always find a Gideon by the nightstand. So
a Quagmire.
Yeah. Giggity. Gideon.
The Bible. Okay, the Bible.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Anyway,
but yes, I hope he's dead. I hope he's dead. Yeah. They introduced so many more bad guys. I mean, obviously we're going to get Pelion coming in, but Brendel Hux.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be so much more fun. They're already talking about, with the end, him going to Carson Teva and saying, "Hey, there's more Imperial Remnant out there." Like they established that he's got the most stuff, so he's going to be the big thing. We can give more, kind of like the Clone Wars saved 2 and 3. I think this might be able to save 7 and 8.
Yeah. Derek?
So I think he's dead because I think that's the reason why they made what they did with my initial complaint of what they did with Moff Gideon just getting an episode and a half, because I think that they finally got Thrawn. I don't think Thrawn was on the table until like a year ago. And they already wrote the story, right? And that's where I think Favreau had written seasons 1, 2, and 3 already as one chapter. And so when they were doing it, 3 was not supposed to have Grogu back, and they were supposed to be spending more time on Mandalore, and Gideon was going to play a bigger part and potentially be the bigger threat. But I think they had to scratch that because they needed to then have Thrawn be the bigger threat, and they had to bring Grogu back. So then all that made this season less on Mandalore and more focused on these other side things that we got with this season. Plus, then this, like I said, the way they wrote it is, like I said, I feel like season 3 is not what Jon Favreau originally wrote. And those were the things that were impacting it. So I think Gideon is dead, though I could see a cameo at some point where Palpatine actually has a clone of Gideon somewhere.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Just like he did with Snoke.
Yeah, right. My answer is no, Gideon, the true Gideon is not dead, and that was a clone. But I'm going to go even further than that. The Gideon that we saw for the tiny little bit that we saw him in season 3 was always one of his clones, even the one going to the Shadow Council and so on and so forth. That was a clone Gideon while the real Gideon was busy doing something else. And the way you can tell, no mustache. That's my theory, is that if you see a Gideon that doesn't have a mustache, that's a clone. If you see Gideon with a mustache, that's the OG Gideon. I don't know if there's any veracity to it. And, you guys might be right. We'll never see Gideon again. But my theory is thus that, that is the
the telltale sign. And like in season 4, and I'm gonna even go so far as to say season 5 of The Mandalorian, we'll all be like, as viewers, oh, there's no mustache. That's a clone Gideon. And eventually it will become like almost a meme of, it's like the Star Wars version of Star Trek's Spock with goatee, right? Like if I have a goatee, then I'm evil in Star Trek. So over here in Star Wars, the joke's going to be, did he have his mustache? If not, that's not the real Biggs. That was clone Biggs or what have you.
It's going to be Star Wars' version of Nick Fury cutting his sandwich diagonally.
Yes.
And everybody's going to be like, that wasn't the real Nick Fury. He cut his sandwich diagonally. Nick Fury can't do that.
It's not the real Moff Gideon. He doesn't have a mustache.
Yeah, I could see it. So I think it was the real Moff Gideon who died, in part because what an epic way to go out. Moff Gideon's not going to go out for anything less than a Star Cruiser plummeting down on top of his head. But I think at least one clone survived, and I have a wild and crazy fan theory as to what's going to happen with it. So we've talked a lot about how we think that they could adapt part of the Thrawn trilogy into the upcoming Star Wars shows and movies.
Heir to the Empire trilogy, of course, yes.
But there were 2 other books that Timothy wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you going to say? You want me to say them, or are you going to say them?
Go ahead and say them.
Well, Hand of Thrawn, and then and now of course I've blanked on the other title. Anyway,
well, I'm glad you blanked on the other title because it's actually Vision of the Future, Inspector of the Past.
Okay,
that I was thinking of.
It was the Hand of Thrawn duology. Yes,
the duology, and in that duology, somebody shows up and pretends to be Thrawn. It's actually 3 people who are pretending to be Thrawn. One of them is a con artist. One of them just looks like Thrawn, and then one of them is a clone. Mm-hmm. His name is Grodin Tierce, and he's providing all of the strategic expertise that kind of mimics what Thrawn had been doing. He's not doing it quite as well as Thrawn had, but he's kind of the brains behind the operation. I think that after adapting part of the Thrawn trilogy, they could go back and adapt part of that duology too, and have a clone of Moff Gideon be the guy behind the scenes pulling the strings. And of course, after Thrawn dies. And part of the twist there would be, we find out later, hey, this isn't the real Gideon at all. This is a clone of Gideon.
Interesting. It would be wild if they continue the Mandalorian Mandoverse.
10 years later.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The Mandoverse goes out that far. That would be amazing. I could see what you're saying happening in a future Marvel comic, Nathan, much more so than the TV series. But hey, I mean, in the age of streaming services, what do I know? They might keep going forever.
Maybe he'll show up in the movie, right? Filoni's movie.
Yeah, I think Filoni's movie Thrawn will be the big bad. Like, I don't think Ahsoka's going to get him. I don't think Mando's going to get him in their shows. I don't think Skeleton Crew's going to get him. I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
I think Ahsoka dies in the movie,
but I think Pershing shows back up in Filoni's movie.
I think he's fried.
I still think.
Yeah, I think Pershing's toast.
I think that his technology
still be
is going to lead to the whole Luke thing, but with somebody other than Luke.
I mean, you could be right about his technology doing that, but the man himself won't be involved.
I think he will.
I think he'll
be in he'll be in a cell, and he's just going to be drooling because he's brain fried.
Yeah.
We haven't seen his drooling or dead body.
Yeah.
Therefore, he's still in play.
And we saw Bodhi Rook come back from the Porcullis. We saw Princess Leia come back from the interrogator droid. We've seen Andor's girlfriend come back from what was her
from
name?
The horrible sound.
Which is the proto mind flayer, really.
Yeah.
The sort of torture in the Star Wars universe is kind of like Imperial purges. It never seems to quite actually be 100% effective.
No. Because we have several instances of where it was 100% effective.
That's true.
for instance, saw Guerrera pointing out the other guys drooling in the corner before Bor Gullet comes over, and he's all like, but there's one problem with it. Yeah. Anyway,
Oops,
And
I
to be
know.
fair, the Republic was using it too. It wasn't the Empire
Yeah.
using it. So the Republic could be really good because they're really good at screwing stuff up. So
Yeah,
They-
well,
they-
obviously
they
they
are
screwed
good
up
at that.
enough to let Kane have access to the dial unattended.
Yes,
Wah, wah, wah,
that
wah, wah.
was.
But,
So,
but keep in mind, the whole reason that they knew the Mind Flayer device would do that was because the Empire had used it to do that.
Yeah,
So
that's why they still had a torture setting. I'm not sure why they didn't tape over it with the, please do not go this high, but
yeah, don't turn to 11. No, look at that, guys. Even had it underlined. My bad.
But this one goes to 11.
Goes to 11. Why do we keep so many
Hello,
dangerous
Coruscant.
things at why do we keep so many dangerous things at the rehabilitation center? All right. Well, if any of those things happen in the next season of The Mandalorian, we will discuss it. But speaking of the next season of The Mandalorian, right after this break, we're going to come back and talk about our overall impressions of season 3 and then predict what we expect to see in season 4.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right. Thanks very much, Kevin. We hope that you will check out those other shows. All right. Well, so let's kick it off with Derrick. Your overall thoughts on season 3 for The Mandalorian.
To me, it's been the weakest of the three. I find that I felt it was too much trying to do in too little time. Even with all the great stuff that we talked about in the season finale, it was too short. I feel like it was rushed. I really wanted them to spend a lot more time, like trying to Mandalore. Oh, it's can't go back. Blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, we can go back. We can just hop back and forth, and we'll go do some other side missions and come back. Like there was some good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but I really feel like the first half of the season was much better than the back half of the season. I felt like it was a lot more, I don't know, just felt like it was better character development, had more fun with it. The last last 3 episodes was kind of like, okay. It just, like I said, overall, I really wasn't as thrilled with this season as I was the past 2. And again, I'm unsure which direction to go. I know we'll talk about season 4 or what we think will happen in season 4 after this. But overall, I mean, it was fun. It was okay. But I really felt like it had a better first half, and then the back half, especially, like I said, the last few episodes didn't hit it out the park as much as I thought that was going to. So.
Yeah, I could see that. And in fact, I'll piggyback on your answer a bit. If I were going to rank the seasons, this one would be the worst of the three, in my opinion. I didn't hate the season or anything, and I still loved it. I still, it's great to still have a Star Wars show to watch. But if I compare it to the other two seasons, it wasn't as strong, and it feels like it wasn't as well thought out. Now, whether that was because the backstage rumors we've heard about, Jon Favreau didn't want Grogu to be in season 3, or he wasn't planning on writing season 3 in quite this same way, or whatever it may be, it's still obvious to me that season 3 didn't feel as well thought out as the other two seasons. And I think that the lack of Moff Gideon as an overarching figure is part of the reason for that. Him being that specter of evil, if you will, specter of the past, was a key ingredient to seasons 1 and 2, where they were episodic enough to be classic formula television, but they had enough of an arc with him sort of tying everything together to make it be an overarching narrative that is a much more satisfying type of season-long story. I think that's the main thing. Season 1 and season 2 each felt like they had an overarching season-long story. The first one obviously being about protecting Grogu, and the second one being about, saving Grogu,
returning
and getting him back to his people. In season 3, the overarching story is,
The
there kind of wasn't one.
reunification of Mandalore?
Maybe.
The designing of a culture.
Perhaps. But it didn't feel as obvious that that's what Din was working toward for every episode. Like, it was always sort of in the background. But at first I thought it was going to be him redeeming himself. Then I thought maybe it was going to be rebuilding Mandalore as a planet. Then I thought it was going to be about Bo-Katan finding her way back to her faith and joining the way. And then I thought it was going to be about it just wasn't, the through line isn't there as healthily as it is in season 1 and season 2.
It was rushed. There was just a lot going on in 8 episodes.
Yeah, there is definitely a through line there, but it only becomes obvious in retrospect. As we approach the finale, there's lots of different feelings of, well, this is obviously what the season's about. I'm just kidding. This is what the season's about. Well, actually, all of those things were leading into it being about this one other thing. Yeah, that's not good Star Wars writing to me. Now, did I hate the season? Of course not. I thought it was great. I enjoyed all of the episodes. I think they each had their strong points, and of course, they each had their weak points. Is what we do here every week on the podcast. We break it down into that type of dichotomy. And I liked the quote unquote newer characters that we got to meet. And I thought that Din Djarin as a character grew really well in this season. And I thought that Bo-Katan had a lot of character growth in this season. Grogu seemed to hang out on the sidelines more than he did anything else in this season. He was important in the final 2 episodes, but there were several episodes earlier in the season where he was not that important and did not have that much to do, which I think lends credence to the idea of he wasn't necessarily supposed to be a part of this season when it was originally conceived. Okay, Lee, your thoughts about overall of season 3?
Well, I'll say that this is another season where there's only 2 episodes that Moff Gideon shows up in, as opposed to 3 from season 2. So I mean, he wasn't an overarching character in either season, really. He was just.
I would dispute that he was doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes in season 2
and 3
and
1.
3.
Yeah, he's constantly behind the scenes. Like it's not a fair comparison because he's doing exactly as he always has.
No, in season 1 and 2, he was a more obvious presence.
I'm with Lee, but I'll
In
explain
episodes
more
7
when it's
and
my
8,
turn.
He wasn't an obvious presence. Like random bounty hunters were trying to find him, and then he gets to Navarro, and you've got 2 episodes where he's in any way present. We think it's one guy, and then it's another. And then
Say that again. What?
we don't even know Moff Gideon exists until episode 7. Like we thought that the big
Yeah.
bad guy was going to be Werner Herzog, and then oh no, he's just the messenger.
Yeah, Lee is
So-
spot on with that. We did not know Moff Gideon existed.
Yeah,
For
so
most
he
of
wasn't
season one.
yeah, and we didn't have any Imperial, really between episode 2 and episode 7. Like it was all just
Oh, you're talking about in season 1. You're
in
talking
season
about
one,
in
yeah.
season 1.
Yeah,
Okay,
it wasn't
sure,
even
but the stormtroopers
totally obvious.
involved were working for Moff Gideon.
We don't know that. And
Yeah.
most of the people working against our heroes in this season were also working for Moff Gideon. We just didn't always know that.
yeah. So I mean that's kind of how it all played out, and I would
I
say
could see
that
how you guys could see it that way. I could also see how you guys are totally wrong about that.
at what point in season 1 did you know anything about Moff Gideon? Episode 7.
If I may be fair, season 1 was many years ago,
Yeah.
and I have not gone back to watch it.
But like he wasn't a presence that you were aware of until
no.
they introduced him.
Okay, how about this? At the end of season 1, it became very obvious how involved he was. At the end of season 3, that obviousness is not there.
Except in all the ways that he was.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, Scott.
I mean, the whole
Well, that's-
thing,
you-
with
you
having
guys are
Elliot
fine.
Kane,
That's
yeah.
totally fine for you to disagree with me, and it's totally fine for us not to see the season the same
And-
way. That's entirely the point.
And I will say that this is the first season where it's truly about what Mandalorian means.
Yes,
because really
this
it's
season
been
was-
about the
yeah.
and bringing that in, it's to kind of steal from Marvel, it's not a place, it's a people. And
right.
getting into contact with these people, it's taking the threads that we learned little bits about of the Children of the Watch, and then the what was it, the Stolen Fleet, and like all these people that have this idea of what Mandalore is and disagree about it, and
Yeah.
then bringing those threads together and putting it in. And you'd posted that thing about the spies being related to these 12 spies of Israel in the Old
Right.
Testament.
Yes.
And that really did make me think about the ways that it does come together, and not to get, political, but in founding Israel and in bringing that idea together. Even today, the idea of Judaism and the way that one outwardly shows it is different from, the Hasidim to, just observant, passive Jews. But overall, I liked at the end when they're all in the temple, they all had their head covered. The yarmulke, or whether they wear the hat, some wear the payas and the beards, some don't. But the way that they all observed a similar amount of respect. But then when they were all culturally together, they accepted the differences, when they lit the forge. And so I think that understanding of what being a Mandalorian is really came through in this season. I thought that it built on more from the previous seasons than we had. I'm just really bummed that we didn't get the Marshal back. He's yeah,
No comment.
yeah. We need more Cobb Vanth. He needs his spin-off show.
He does. That would be great.
And he was supposed to, but they made it IG-11, which I don't know why.
Well,
Maybe it wasn't available.
he's the Marshal of the Mos Pelgo territories, so everything from over there to over there is controlled by me.
Yep.
All right, Nathan, what do you got? Season 3 overall.
All right. Well, I'm going to take what you and Derek said and do a whole 360 on you.
It's 180, you spaghetti swilling cretin.
You're right. It is a 180 because I totally disagree with both of you. I feel like this season was the strongest of the three. I feel like it had the strongest through line because it's the only one to me that really had a through line all the way through. The first two seasons I felt like were much more episodic. Yeah, we had an overarching idea of protect Grogu or get Grogu back to the Jedi, but every week Din shows up somewhere and I need this thing. We'll give you this thing if you do this side quest. Every week was a different side quest in the first two seasons, which is fine, but I liked this season for having a stronger idea of, we are looking at the Mandalorian people and getting them back together. And yeah, we didn't always know exactly how each episode fit into that puzzle, but I think with the benefit of hindsight, we can see that. And I think the idea that there's a through line in the first 2 seasons really only exists with the benefit of hindsight there as well. At the time, we talked a lot about how, this is so episodic. We have this episode where Mando crashes on an ice planet, and we follow that up with Mando goes to a water planet, and we follow that up with some totally other thing.
This isn't Star Wars. It's the Pirates of Dark Water. Anyway.
But in this season, everything was building towards bringing back together the 2 different sides of the Mandalorian people, or at least the 2 that we know of. I think there may be more out there. And that's a discussion for the future. But everything was building towards getting Bo-Katan back as the leader. And I think this season, a lot of people took the Mandalorian to mean Din himself and nothing else. I think that was the mistake. The Mandalorian is not just Din. It's also Bo-Katan. It's also Paz Vizsla and the Armorer. It's all the Mandalorians. It's the whole people as a people. And in some ways, it's Moff Gideon too, because he's appropriating Mandalorian culture. And to Lee's point too, you talked about Moff Gideon. He didn't show up until episode 7 or 8. He showed up in episode 7 and then was primarily in episode 8 of the original season. He didn't show up all that much in season 2 either. He's always pulling the strings behind the scenes, and he does that again this season. So that's not really different. He just did it in a different way. Everything that Elia did.
You just said it's not really different. He just did it differently.
It is not different that he is pulling the strings. He just pulled different strings. He pulled Elia. He pulled the pirates. But by the end of the season, we know he's the one pulling those strings.
Do you think that the first 2 seasons were episodic, or were they simply formulaic with your analysis there of Din goes to the thing and now he has to do this thing to get the MacGuffin? And that happened in a couple of episodes in season 3 too.
It did. There were a couple of more episodic episodes. The Jack Black episode in particular was very much episodic.
Or was it formulaic?
No, episodic. It was contained to that episode. The formula for the Jack Black episode was NCIS or CSI or any of the
Law and Order.
It was Law and Order, Star Wars Victims Unit.
Was it episodic or was it procedural?
It was both.
Yes, it was both. Yeah, for sure.
The storylines of Star Wars are protected by 2 different procedural or episodic. These are their stories.
And that's where you could have gotten Cobb Van, IG-11 together as buddy cop, right? They're out there busting, and then they have to bring him to Grief Karga, and he's got to hold them in court.
And the doink doink sound is the hammer hitting the tongs. Dunk, dunk.
Ding, ding. Well, I think the fact that half the ship is all and the other half of the ship is all brilliant proves that it is actually brilliant because it's art and we can all interpret it in another way. So
Nathan, he just said we're right.
That's right.
I said that. I'm glad
he said art is beautiful.
That's
and
right.
He said that half the ship said it was brilliant, which is us, and then he said that means it's actually brilliant, which is an admission that Nathan and Lee are right.
Yes.
Heap your accolades upon yourselves. Anyway, the point is,
we will.
That it is obviously well done enough that we can interpret it correctly in 2 different ways. So, I mean, that's great. Hats off to Favreau and Filoni and the whole team there. And perhaps in season 4, it'll enrich the storyline enough that Derek and I can look back at season 3 and be all like, oh, that's why that happened. But I'm not holding my breath.
Now, I will grant you 1 point, and that is Grogu. Grogu very much felt like he was tacked on. But that to me
Well-
supports the idea that there was a stronger through line that
And
they had to tack Grogu on. Like
so
if
Yeah.
it were more like the first two seasons, they could have had Grogu more involved because it wouldn't have mattered from one episode to the next what he had actually done.
Right. Grogu would have been a more integrated part of the story.
So, and this is going to go back to the whole episodic formulaic, whatever you want to call it here. So, but I think that's why I liked episode 1, episode 2, or I'm sorry, season 1 and season 2 better than season 3, because season 1 and season 2 is to me Star Trek and Star Trek TNG, while season 3 is Discovery, where I think season 1, season 2 has an overall story and it's slower paced. It has space in between. Season 3, again, to me feels more rushed. Like it has a good overall story. Like I'm not discrediting anything that you said, Nathan, where and Lee, where you talked about, building the Mandalorian culture and all that. Again, I just feel like it was pushed too fast. It was just like every episode was, here we're going to learn something new about Mandalorians and they're going to do something here and blah, blah, blah. But it's all within like a matter of like a week span time frame, like not even. Right. And to me, it felt like a longer movie than it needed to be, or, and again, I like episodic stuff where I don't have to have this overarching, let me take that back, the way I speak this. So again, I like the overarching story when it's spread out. And I feel like this overarching story was too sped up.
When you say within a week, do you mean like the season in universe took place over a week?
That's to me how it felt, right? Like we literally they went here.
It's always so hard to tell time in Star Wars.
But if you think about like season 1, right? To Nathan's point where he said like you do this and you do this, like not necessarily it has to be. I mean, it could have all been in the same week. Let's be honest, right?
I felt like it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, because
I mean, there are definitely episodes that had to have been. We left off here and picked up immediately.
Yes. No, I'm not arguing that, but I just feel like there's points into it, because it almost feels like I said, you could have had a little bit of time in between. Yes, I get Grogu's on the run and blah, 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 but you still could have had enough in season 1 and season 2, the spaces in between, where I felt like it wasn't rushed. Like I said, with the story.
I feel like the same is true of season 3. There are definitely episodes where there could have been a week or a month in between what happened in this episode and that episode.
I don't.
I'm not gonna weigh in on the.
Yeah.
I'm not going to weigh in on the passage of time thing, because, like I said, it's Star Wars. In any Star Wars story,
yes.
I mean,
it's
good
really
grief.
hard to tell.
Look at Empire Strikes Back. Like keeping a timeline of that is almost as hard as keeping a timeline of The Last Jedi.
But just the pacing, then. Let's just say the way, to me, the pacing felt different this season than it has the past 2 seasons.
So I think, in my opinion, a better comparison than saying Next Generation and Discovery would be Next Generation and Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
I was just about to point out. So, are we saying that none of this is Deep Space Nine? Because I get more Deep Space Nine vibe than I do anything else.
Yeah, I was going to say like DS9 or Enterprise.
Yeah, especially
moving
those
towards
later
that.
seasons of Enterprise.
Yeah,
where there's like season-long stories.
And every 3 episodes was like a contained story. So it's like you basically get
An
like,
arc.
a movie, really.
yeah. Although for Enterprise, that was mostly the 4th season that did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. But
Well, it was the third.
there's a little bit in the 3rd
was,
season.
Yeah, it started
little
really
bit.
with the Zindi thing. So
Yeah. Although I kind of felt like the Zindi thing was the whole season, not just like 2 or 3 episodes connected. I kind of felt like that.
Well, once they
Well,
kind of destroyed Earth, like that was when it, and they like had to go into whatever the Expanse, or I know it was something else, but
the Delphic Expanse.
yeah.
But then every once in a while there would be an episode that was something else.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Jack Black episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways,
Which I realize has a name, Guns for Hire, but I'm always going to call it the Jack Black episode.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
if we want to talk about disappointment with this season, the fact that we did not get a Jack Black and Lizzo theme song out of this.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
That is a missed opportunity.
Jack Black and Lizzo showed up, and the theme song we got for the week from Jack Black was Peaches from the Mario.
Right?
The
Like, come
Mario
on,
movie.
we could have had
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Some type of music video, right? Or at least a post credit, right? That
I mean,
Yeah.
like we at
Of
least
them
had,
doing like royal karaoke. That would have been so great.
Oh man. Jack
like,
Black
when
needs to go back and do that.
they should have been doing some karaoke of Huey Lewis back in time,
yeah.
because you would have had it with the Christopher Lloyd. So
Yes, totally. Okay, all right. Let's move on to our final topic for discussion and see, if we're split down the middle again, or everybody just goes their own way. Nathan, what are you predicting for season 4?
All right. I'm predicting that we are essentially going to take the storylines that we expected to get with Cara Dune and give them to Mando. Just straight up. Take that whole show and replace one character with Mando and Grogu. And the reason I think that is because of that scene that he has with Carson Teva at the end of the episode, where he talks about, hey, I need something a little safer, where I'm not always endangering this little green alien that I had no problem taking to Mandalore, but whatever. No problem risking it in highly dangerous situations, but now I do.
almost every episode.
Yeah, every episode, some new danger. But now he's going to be working for Carson Teva, kind of off the books, but he's effectively going to be a Ranger of the New Republic. So I think they're just going to take a lot of the ideas, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of the ideas that they had for that show, and kind of transfer them over. And I think part of that is because Dave's involved in that show too. I think some of it leads up to Thrawn, and they don't want to get rid of some of that buildup. So they're just transferring who it's going to. Now, I'd prefer that to go to Cobb Vanth and have Mando do something else. But my prediction is Rangers of Mandalore. And I do think we'll check back in with Bo-Katan every once in a while and see how Mandalore itself is doing. But that won't be the main focus.
Cool. That sounds like fun to me. I'm going to piggyback on that and say all that's true, but it will have a little bit more of the bounty hunting bent to it than the Rangers bent to it. And so we will see Din worrying about getting paid. And I think that having the cabin at Bullock Canyon will mean that Grogu can be hanging out there with like Grief Karga or somebody, or the Armorer, as a babysitter sometimes, while Din goes off to deal with much more dangerous bounties. And I will predict the return of an old EU character that will be an antagonist, but not quite a villain, and that is Jodo Cast will show up as a dude who is also a bounty hunter working for the New Republic, but in the vein of the old bounty hunting guild. And he and Din will be rivals for particular bounties every so often. And so we will see Jodo Cast and the Mandalorian not quite fight each other, but they'll be frenemies, if you know what I'm saying. And so they will bump into each other every so often, both going after the same bounty. And like occasionally they'll be forced to team up, even though they wouldn't really want to, because each of them wants the money or the prestige for themselves.
The only person that can play that is Dan Aykroyd. Straight up, like that was who he was in Grosse Point Blank. So he's like the other one, like they're constantly competing for jobs. Like that's
right. Yeah, that would be great. Okay,
Some
yeah. So
mission
Lee,
from Java.
yeah. All right, Lee. What do you expect for season 4? Predictions for season 4.
Well, first, I hate to do it, Nathan, but I disagree. I don't think he's taking the safer jobs. I think he's taking the more morally upright jobs because he's got a kid to raise. And I think by taking Republic contracts, he has a better understanding. Like that, he's not going to be going after Horatio Sands again. He's not going to necessarily be, cutting guys in half with a door. He's going to be trying to be on the moral side. He's a dad now. He needs to just make those decisions. But I really want to see the rise of the First Order. I want to see how that starts. I want to see, because I mean the the hallway troopers, that really looked a lot like what ends up becoming the First Order stormtroopers. Even the pistols, very similar to their shorter blasters. So I think that we're going to get some of that. And I hope at a certain point we see the army that's been amassed, and we just get that episode 2, clone troopers marching into the thing, like just dun, 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 dun. I think that would be the cool way to go. But like, that's what I want to see. I want to see one of the old rules of tragedy isn't that it's bad, but the ways you can watch how it could have been different. I want to see how it could have been different. And we really started that with Tim Meadows. He was on there and he's like, I guess nothing we can do, being really friendly about it, but like leaving these people to die.
Yeah.
And I want to see that
he had done
indifference
that
being
differently.
yeah. So that's my answer.
Okay, that's a good prediction for season 4. I hope that happens. Actually, that sounds good. Derek, bring it on home. What's your prediction for season 4?
So here's what I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping we get a season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett that can wrap up that story, and then get Cobb Vanth's spinoff, right? Because that was how it ended. So we hope we get a spinoff of the Mandalorians, so Bo-Katan can get her fleshed out story, whether she's going to be good or bad, and what they're going to do with that. And then the new the Republic Rangers will hopefully be Zeb and Trapper Wolf and all them on their own adventures.
Yes,
and that'll be a
so cool.
spinoff. And then that way they're all their own spinoffs, and we don't have to see them other than a slight cameo in the Mandalorian season 4. Because if we don't, then you're going to get all that in an 8-episode season 4, and it's going to be crap again. Because again, they're trying to do too much in too few of episodes. So I want it to be spaced out, even if it's just a limited series. Give me that. That's what I want. And then that way, hopefully, then to what you guys are talking, what I'd love to see is get back to episodic Mando, but he's overarching of how he's handling raising Grogu is the main concern, right? Whether that is having to flee from the Empire / potentially the First Order, or is it now the Republic is coming after him for something, right? Like he's doing these contracts and something goes awry middle of the season, and now he's got to flee from the Republic now, right? So we get that interaction, but it's about Mando and Grogu at this point. It's not about everybody else, other than, we get occasional stuff, but it's not this overarching story where it all has to connect, because I want there to be some time now that we've kind of really had, to be fair, season 2 and season 3 had all this connectivity to it, especially with the Bo-Katan and the Darksaber and Moff Gideon and all this stuff. I want it to go back to season 1 feeling, give me a break. Let me just be Din. Grogu get some good character development between the two. That's fine if you're going to give Grogu the ability to speak, or he's going to mumble in words and be like Chewie, and somehow Din, can respond to him. Whatever they want to do, that's perfectly fine. But I want to see some character growth between the two of them together, and not just. I feel like this small, especially with all the great stuff that Lee and Nathan talked about that happened in this season 3 of what being a Mandalorian is about. And this is, again, the journey that Din needs to do back to bounty hunting, because he needs to get Grogu prepared to then be able to take the oath.
Yeah, I hope that in season 4, Grogu has more to do than he did in season 3. I will say that for sure, no matter what the rest of the predictions may or may not be. Technical question for you guys about a prediction on season 4. Will we only have 8 episodes again, or will we have more than 8 episodes?
8 episodes.
8.
I think they'll go for 10.
I
I think 10 is going to be the right number going forward. It just, if they're going to make it this much bigger, they're going to need that. And I do think that there needs to be like a purely just cultural episode on Mandalore, like meeting up with the armorer, in the forge, and actually seeing something being made, and
that would be cool.
and hearing the sound of, the 100 armorers, seeing her with apprentices. And I just want at some point, they've got like the spotchka or whatever that liquor was that Grief Karga brought from Coruscant.
The Saurian brandy.
Yeah. Yeah. The Romulan ale.
Yes.
But
yes.
if they brought that, and just kind of had like a drinking night or something like that, where they can tell the stories, and maybe we finally get the full story of, the Night of 1,000 Tears. We kind of got it in pieces.
It's the we sit around the fire and drink clip show episode of The Mandalorian.
I want them to do that while playing a game of Mandalorian chess.
Oh, that was so cool, wasn't it? I love the Mandalorian chess.
And when they're drinking, before they start drinking, I want the armorer to come in. Do you have a glass for me? And I hand her a glass. She just raised it above her head. Let's get hammered. I mean,
no.
Yes.
No, too far.
Boo earns.
You walk right up to the line, and then you pole vaulted right over it.
There is the eject button for Lee. Dump.
I'm just going to shoot the window and fly out.
That's it.
So I think Lee's right that 10 is the right number. I think they will go for 8 anyway.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I think if they were going to go for anything outside of 8 would have been this season. I think that, again, and I probably would have enjoyed it better because, again, they could have not. Again, really what I wanted this past season was for them to spend so much time on Mandalore and do all that stuff, and we didn't get that. And I think that's why I'm probably more against this season, because it didn't do anything what I wanted it to. You got it, but that might be more jaded. I'm jaded.
I'm just saying I didn't want it to go this way.
But anyways, like I said, enjoy it. I just get me back to basic season 1 for at least another season. And but I like all that stuff. I mean, give me more Mandalorian culture, develop that, right? But again, if that's just one episode, that's fine. But then I don't need a whole 2-3 episodes of Bo-Katan, unless, like I said, hey, I need you, Bo, to go on, or Bo tells Din, I need you to go on this mission and do this stuff. So
all right. Well, speaking of Mandalorian culture, oh yes, go Derek.
I think we could just have an episode where he takes a bounty that's on Mandalore. And then she could work in that way, and it will be a natural inclusion.
That'd be fine too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Mandalorian culture, let's talk about what Star Wars t-shirts we're wearing this week, because mine is steeped in Mandalorian culture, and I just realized I'm going to have to start moving this microphone out of the way to do the t-shirt thing. Didn't think this through. Anyway, I've got Mandalorian Bounty Hunter as my t-shirt, given to me by a friend of the show, Steven Suits, from the Disney parks in Galaxy's Edge, and it's just got the classic Mythosaur skull logo there that says Mandalorian Bounty Hunter in the circle, and it's basically the seal of approval for the guys who, for most Star Wars fans, was their main first introduction to the idea of bounty hunters in the Star Wars galaxy through one, of course, Boba Fett. Derek, what Star Wars t-shirt do you have on this week?
I gotta go. I was gonna save me for last, but that's all good. I am wearing a What a Piece of Junk.
Hey, what a piece of junk shirt!
Junk.
Excellent
what a piece of shirt!
What a piece of shirt, indeed.
I need that shirt
Good
someday.
choice.
I will wear that every day till I die. If you make that one,
What a piece of shirt!
yeah.
All right, Lee, what shirt do you have on this week?
We'll see. If you guys would make the What a Piece of Shirt, I would have a Star Wars t-shirt on. Unfortunately, I just had to go with the Han Solo vest.
Nothing wrong with a perfect Han Solo vest. Good stuff with all the pouches and
and it's got the magazine stuff on the back. It's cool stuff, It's made out of real gorilla chest. My loafers are made of gophers. For all the old people, that's a Simpsons reference.
My loafers are made of gophers. Yes, good times. Okay, Nathan, please, once again, class up the podcast by whatever shirt you have on.
All right. Well, I am wearing my 4-up of Grogu, the child, because,
Nice.
This is the Mandalorian season finale. So I got to do something Mandalorian related. And what could be more Mandalorian related than the titular Mandalorian himself, Grogu?
Oh,
That's
shots
right.
fired.
That's right. I don't care about you, Dan. Grogu is the real Mandalorian here.
Speaking of shots fired,
So is
at,
Din, and so is Bo-Katan. And
right. Speaking of shots fired at Grogu, Nathan had an awesome observation about Grogu and his Force powers from Star Wars Legion tabletop game that apparently was a spoiler in plain sight for quite some time. Nathan, explain to the listeners what I'm talking about.
so in the Star Wars Legion miniatures game, all your commanders and your operatives have command cards, which allow them to influence the battlefield in each round. Well, Grogu has one, and his is a little weird. You can't play it normally. You play it kind of reactively to protect Grogu and those near him. And the art on his card is Grogu standing amidst a ball of fire doing the magic hand thing. The title of the card is even the magic hand thing, but it's not the magic hand thing that he does in season 1 of The Mandalorian. It is very much from this episode, holding back the fire and creating this bubble that protects him and those around him.
But he did that in season 1 too, when the flame troopers came through.
Yeah, but did he do it with the background from this episode?
Oh, I did not see that. No. All right.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure they did it on purpose, but it looks like it's straight out of this episode.
It looks like
I'm
he's
gonna have to
standing
Google
in
it
Moff
now.
Gideon's base on Mandalore. Yeah. But yeah, it was cool that he was doing the bubble to protect. And it's even more so than just fire. It looks more like an explosion than the
Yeah,
flame.
it really does.
It's not quite, directed flame weaponry like the magma troopers. Magma troopers? That's what they're called, right? Are they called magma troopers?
They were flame troopers. The magma troopers were the ones on Mustafar.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew somebody was a magma trooper.
I was
Anyway,
gonna say
but
that name's not hitting it for me.
By the way, anyone else find it weird that Grogu is basically Krang in the giant metal body, but he teams up with the guys that live in the sewers that use the masks to cover their face to identify themselves instead of obscure their identity? Like he basically, joined up with the turtles.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why
Yeah.
he's on the winning side, whereas Krang was on the losing side.
Yeah. Bo-Katan leads, the armor does machines, Paz Vizsla is cool but crude, and Din Djarin is a party dude.
Yeah. That works way, way better than I want it to.
Right?
Wait, now are we going to say Din's a party dude? I kind of felt like Din was was way too serious for a party dude.
I
Do
feel
we
like
wanna-
Din never got invited to parties. He was that dude.
Yeah. I don't know that. I
But when
would
he
call him a
shows up,
party
he's
dude.
really cool though, and he becomes the life of the party. But he never gets invited.
Yeah.
He constantly they always invite him to stay. Mando, good to see you back. Want to be our magistrate? If you just stayed here, you and I could raise some little hatchlings or whatever on our
Yeah.
Krill
Well,
planet.
because
Yeah.
remember when Grief Cargo in season 1, Grief is all like, if you take this, you could buy a huge Camtono worth of spice and forget all your troubles. And he's all like, no, I can't do that. I have,
Maybe
honor.
Axe Woves is the party dude.
Axe Woves
Yeah.
is the party dude. That's got it. He's like the frat bro Mando. Frat Mando.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
By the way,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
had another idea for like a smash up costume. Bro Katan.
Broken.
So it would be an Oakley helmet, like it just like 90s crappy Oakleys, but like the helmet would be Oakley's. And
The
then
entire
like the armor would be like a wife beater t-shirt.
and flip-flops of course.
But like metal flip-flops and
Yeah,
the pauldrons
Beskar
would just be
flip-flops.
like you would have like the Mudhorn tattoo over here, you'd have the Mythosaur tattoo over here.
No, I got it. Not Beskar flip-flops. It would be, hold on, Beskar stocks. It's Birkenstocks
Nice.
made of Beskar. Beskar stocks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine how it would feel to wear such a thing.
or how loud they would be when you walked down the hall. Clank, 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 clank.
Aha! Broke it in. I heard you coming a mile away.
I
But how?
recognized your-
Clang,
That's
clang.
sick, bro.
I recognized your foul sound the moment you came on board.
I recognized your Axe body spray when I was brought on board.
Gross. Wow. Your Axe Woves body spray. Okay.
Oh.
Winner!
This
All
is
right.
terrible. Nathan,
So
save us
those
by
eject
telling
buttons.
the fans where they can find. Well, first of all, if you want a shirt like Derrick's, because how awesome is it? Please check out the TeePublic store at tpublic.com/Fandom Podcast Network. You just search up Fandom Podcast Network on the TeePublic store. And if you don't want a shirt, you get that mug that Derrick's modeling up there, or maybe an iPad case or a mouse pad or any of that cool merchandise. And now, Nathan, please class up the joint once again by telling the listeners where they can find us out there on the internet.
All right. Well, if for some reason you still want to listen to us, you can find us pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. If you want to see our lovely faces, you can watch us on YouTube. Or maybe you should listen to us somewhere else where you can't see. Oh my gosh, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Moving on. You can also reach us on Facebook, What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. Derrick runs that. Or you can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. On Twitters, we are at What Wars. And on Instagram, you can reach the entirety of the Fandom Podcast Network under Fandom Podcast Network. What we lack in creativity, we more than make up for in clarity. So, Derrick, tell us about the reviews that people can leave for us.
So whether you download or stream us off whatever those beautiful platforms for podcasting, it'd be great to leave us a review because, again, that's the best way to make sure that, well, I guess if you don't want to listen to us anymore and you want us off the air for all these bad jokes, then don't leave a review or give us a 0, one or the other, and tell us how much we suck and how much you hate us. But hopefully, since you stuck through us this long, you are liking the show enough that you leave us 5 stars to help us build up in the queue, as well as get other listeners to catch us because we all want to make more space junkies out there.
Absolutely. So thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. Lee, thanks for dropping in to discuss the season finale. And we will be taking a quick break for next week, as Derrick has said, but we'll be back to talk about all the cool stuff coming on May the 4th this year, the week after that. So thank you all so much. Please always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.